In the quiet coastal town of Harbor Rock, storms are more than weather, they are warnings. On one terrifying night, a pregnant veterinarian stood alone inside her small rescue clinic, listening to the alarm scream through the darkness. And beside her, a 4-year-old German shepherd she once saved from the cold streets, now stood ready to save her life. When the window shattered and the smell of gasoline crept in, the German shepherd didn't hesitate. The dog positioned himself between her and the danger stalking her in the shadows. His deep brown eyes said everything. "You are not alone, not while I breathe." And what this brave dog would soon do would turn a mother's fear into a miracle and prove that loyalty can be stronger than greed, stronger than violence, stronger than death itself. Before we begin, if you believe in courage, faith, and the love our animals give us, please like this video, subscribe, and share your prayers in the comments below. Fog rolled in from the Pacific, draping Harbor Rock in a cold, salt-kissed shroud. Rachel Morgan stood beneath the rusted sign of Lighthouse Haven, one hand supporting the curve of her 6-month pregnancy. She was 28, petite but resilient, with soft, chestnut-brown hair tied in a practical bun, and freckles dusted across her pale cheeks. Remnants from childhood days spent running along these same docks with bare feet and big dreams. Today, however, the weight she carried inside her felt heavier than the ocean's breath. Her mother had built this small animal rescue clinic board by board with her own tired hands. It was meant to be a beacon, a refuge for creatures tossed aside. When her mother died last year, Rachel promised to keep the light burning, even if grief sometimes threatened to extinguish it completely. Beside her sat Coda, a 4-year-old German shepherd with black and tan fur and deep brown eyes, steady as a lighthouse beam. He had been rescued from a neglect case. Rachel still remembered the trembling pup curled behind a dumpster, bones and fear. Now he stood tall, a loyal protector with a calm, soldier-like posture. He sensed every shadow before she did, and maybe that was why she felt safe enough to breathe. Rachel pinned up a colorful flyer, "Free Vaccination Day for Low-Income Owners," hoping someone would see it, hoping someone still believed kindness mattered. As she smoothed the edges, Coda's ears snapped upright. The sound came first, the low rumble of an expensive engine cutting through the silence. A glossy black SUV crawled into the parking lot like a predator tasting the air. Doors clicked, sharp, confident. Out stepped Chase Hale, 22, the spoiled prince of Harbor Rock's wealthiest family. He was tall and sharply dressed, with slick blonde hair and a smug curve to his mouth that suggested the world should kneel at his designer shoes. "Morning, Rachel," he said, leaning back like the asphalt belonged to him. His voice dripped arrogance and a practiced charm worn thin by entitlement. "Got a great opportunity for you." Rachel's heart squeezed. She knew this tone well. It always meant loss. "My father, Victor Hale, has a plan," Chase continued, gesturing toward the mist-covered harbor. "A luxury marina, high-end condos, tourists spending big, and unfortunately—" He flicked his manicured fingers at the rescue center as if brushing away dirt. "This place is in the way." Rachel forced a steady breath. Her baby kicked as if echoing her anxiety. "This is my home," she said, "and it's the home of every vulnerable animal in this town. I'm not selling." Chase's smile sharpened. "Sentimentality is a disease, Rachel." Coda stepped forward then, muscles tense, tail low, gaze locked on Chase. A warning without a growl. Chase scoffed. "Move that mutt before I put it down myself." Something inside Rachel snapped, fear tangled with fury. "You don't get to threaten him." Chase lunged forward and swung his foot at Coda. But he never connected. A strong hand clamped around Chase's wrist, stopping the kick mid-air. Jack Dalton stood behind him, silent and immovable. Jack was in his mid-30s, broad-shouldered, his body marked by years of rescue missions with the Coast Guard. His dark hair was a mess from sea winds, and a faded scar traced his jawline, the kind of mark that hinted at a story he never told. His blue eyes held storms, but storms that protected, not destroyed. "Don't," Jack said, voice low, steady as the tide. Chase jerked his arm free, cheeks burning red with humiliation. "You have no idea who my family is." Jack didn't blink. "Doesn't change who you are, kid." Coda eased closer to Rachel, watching every movement with soldier focus. Chase pointed a trembling finger at Rachel. "This isn't over. You'll regret saying no." He stomped back to the SUV, slamming the door loud enough to crack the air. Tires squealed, spitting gravel like sparks as he fled. Silence settled. Uneasy. Rachel pressed a hand to her belly, whispering to the tiny heartbeat inside. "It's okay. We're okay." But her voice wavered. Jack knelt briefly, giving Coda a reassuring pat before meeting Rachel's eyes. "Just say the word," he murmured. "You don't have to fight this alone." She wanted to believe that, but Harbor Rock was small, and the Hales owned nearly every brick of it. Trusting help could be a dangerous luxury. The day dragged into evening. Rachel finished charting vaccinations and cleaning kennels, her back aching. Coda lay near the exam room door, but his ears never relaxed. Night came quickly, thick, smothering. Rachel sat in the old leather chair her mother once used, listening to the baby's heartbeat thrum softly through a handheld Doppler monitor. It was the only sound that made her feel brave. Then, shatter. Glass exploded behind her. The back window, destroyed. Red paint sprayed across the wall. Sell or sink. The words dripped like fresh wounds. Coda leapt in front of her, snarling now. A sound that said, "Over my dead body." Rachel's breath froze as headlights flashed outside, the SUV again, and then gone. A shrill alarm cut through the night. The smell of gasoline seeped from the storage room. Coda barked toward the dark hall. Fire was coming, and Rachel realized the war had already begun. Rain hammered the rescue center roof like 1,000 restless fists. The fire had been contained, only a scorched corner of the storage room left behind, but Rachel Morgan felt the heat of fear still crackling beneath her skin. She stood barefoot in the clinic's dim light, one hand instinctively covering her swollen stomach. The lingering scent of gasoline clung to the air, reminding her that someone didn't just want her gone. They wanted to terrify her first. Coda paced the hallway, nails tapping against worn linoleum. His posture remained tense, tail still, and ears pricked. The glow from the emergency lights caught the faint scar on his flank, a reminder of the night she found him. Injured, abandoned, but unbroken. Tonight, he seemed to realize that his past wasn't the only one chasing them. The front door opened with a squeal. Sheriff Mason Klein stepped inside, water dripping from the brim of his hat onto his uniform. He was a man in his late 40s, with a gaze that rarely met anyone's eyes for long, a thick mustache beginning to gray, and shoulders sloped beneath the weight of a job he didn't always have the courage to do right. Harbor Rock once trusted him, until the Hale family's influence seeped into every corner of law enforcement like black mold. "Well," he muttered, staring at the burned storage shelves, "looks like a warning. You sure you want to stay put?" Rachel bit the inside of her cheek. "This is my home." Klein gave a half shrug, half apology expression, as if his loyalty to the Hales justified his helplessness. "Just be careful." He handed her a soggy pamphlet, instructions for reporting vandalism, then backed out the door, before she could demand more. Coward, Rachel thought, or maybe just bored. By morning, Harbour Rock looked almost peaceful. The storm swept away, the sky washed clean. But Rachel's world was far from restored. Sheriff Klein returned, but this time with a court injunction. "Coda must be muzzled in public," he read, avoiding her eyes, "pending a dangerous animal hearing." Coda whined, leaning against her thigh as if he understood the insult. Rachel swallowed hard. "Coda protected me from your friend's son," she whispered. Klein wet his lips. That's not how Chase wrote it in his statement. Jack Dalton, who had arrived early to help, stepped forward. He wore jeans, a navy flannel shirt, damp boots. His hair was wind-tousled, and his expression stormier than last night. Jack, though rugged and stoic, carried a quiet empathy, the kind built from years witnessing both tragedy and survival at sea. "You know Chase instigated the whole thing," Jack said coldly. "I didn't see it myself," Klein replied, "and no one crosses Victor Hale without consequences." His shoulders rounded further under the confession. Then he left, not out of duty, but fear. 3 hours later, Rachel's worst morning continued. A well-dressed woman arrived, heels clacking against the tile floor. Madeline Pierce, early 40s, perfectly styled blonde hair, pearl earrings glinting like trophies. Her eyes, icy and dramatic, scanned the clinic with disdain. "I'm here to file an official complaint," she declared. "You treated my Luna yesterday. The poor darling died shortly after leaving this establishment." Rachel's heart plummeted. "That's impossible," she stammered. "The cat was stable. I even offered overnight monitoring." Madeline dabbed at non-existent tears with a silk handkerchief. "Your negligence must have caused internal damage." Jack watched her closely, suspicion flashing through his gaze. Something about the woman's theatrics felt staged. Her distress too rehearsed, her accusations too swift. "I'll be requesting your license be suspended immediately," Madeline added, before sweeping out into the fog like a villain in perfect makeup. Rachel's knees weakened. Jack steadied her with a gentle hand. "You saved that cat. We both know it." "But what if this works?" she whispered. "They're taking everything, one piece at a time." Her mind spiraled. The stress, the fear, the baby's safety. She wasn't just fighting for a building. She was fighting for the life inside her and the loyal heart beside her. They worked in silence to clean up debris. Jack crouched beneath her aging truck to check for damage. That's when his fingers brushed something metallic, a tracking device. He slid out, face hardened. "They're watching every move you make." Rachel shivered. Paranoia twisted into reality. "How can they justify all this?" "Power doesn't need justification," Jack replied. "It just needs obedience." He stood, holding her gaze with a sudden intensity. "You don't have to face this alone. I still have people I can call, people who don't scare easily." She tried to smile, but it cracked into worry. "Feels like my life turned into a thriller overnight." Jack smirked, though his eyes remained alert. "Then we're casting reinforcements." He stepped toward the kitchen phone, but the clinic's lights snapped off. Instant black. Coda growled, body tensing. A metallic click sounded at the back door. Someone was inside. Rachel's breath caught. One hand flew to her belly. Jack motioned her behind him, muscles coiled like a drawn bow. Coda lowered his stance, teeth bared. The fog outside pressed against the windows like a living thing, and the terror inside pressed closer. The nightmare wasn't waiting anymore. Night dropped like a wet canvas over Harbour Rock, the tide breathing hard. Rachel stood at the back entrance of Lighthouse Haven, one palm braced against the weight of her belly, the other tightening the strap of a small first aid pack. Fear still clung to the clinic like soot, but purpose was stronger. Coda pressed against her thigh, a steady wall of fur and heat. His coat was damp from the mist, each breath a visible ribbon in the cold. The knob turned with a whisper, and two silhouettes slipped inside. The first was Maya Chen, early 30s, medium height, compact, and coiled like a spring. She wore a charcoal rain shell, hood down despite the drizzle, revealing blunt-cut black hair tucked neatly behind one ear. Her skin had the papery pallor of someone who lived inside screen light. A faint acne scar traced one cheekbone like a comma. Maya's eyes, artfully calm, constantly scanning, gave away the systems analyst she'd once been for Noah before budget cuts sent her to freelance emergency support. She spoke softly, in clean, measured syllables, as if each word was a tool she refused to dull. Power grid on this block was tampered with. Your breaker's fine. Someone cut exterior lines to force a panic. The second was Ben Rossi, mid-30s, taller and wider than the doorway seemed built for. A dark, knit cap hugged close to his skull. A trimmed beard squared his jaw, emphasizing a nose broken long ago and left unapologetically imperfect. His forearms were thick with corded muscle, the kind you earned hauling rope and iron, and a faded tattoo, a St. Christopher medallion, peeked from under his sleeve. He had the patient posture of a man who hated bullies, not because they frightened him, but because they bored him. Alarm sensors out back were bridged with a cheap bypass, he said, crouching to hold up a bit of scraped copper. Sloppy means they're confident. Rachel felt Coda lean into her as if urging courage. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I'm a vet, not—" She stopped, hearing the tremor in her voice. "Not this." "You're doing exactly what you should," Maya replied. "You called for help." Jack entered behind them with a boxy case he dug out from his garage. Relics of a life spent finding people who needed saving. His face was tighter than usual, eyes taking fast inventory of exits, shadows, angles. "We need to get ahead of their timing. If they cut lines last night and escalated by morning with false complaints, the next push will come under cover," he said. "Night gives them room to move trucks." Maya flipped open a compact tablet, its matte screen glowing dull blue. "I've been sniffing wireless traffic on the industrial band," she murmured, thumb scrolling. North Star Horizons, Victor Hale's shell company, set up a private mesh at the harbor construction site. Heavy encryption, but they got lazy with device naming. She tapped a node labeled C. Wraith Oz. Here. A supply vessel transponder pinged local last hour, then went dark, spoofed as turbine parts. Rachel swallowed. "Then it's true." "Smells like precursor chemicals," Ben said, not unkindly. "We've seen this kind of packaging on other coasts. If they offload at night, you won't see the forklift trails under tomorrow's drizzle." Jack slid a laminated map across the table, droplets beading on its plastic surface. "We can't touch the front gate of their site without a small war. We need the blind side." Rachel stared at the map, the contour of her childhood stitched across it in grey lines. A memory surfaced, her father's laugh echoing inside stone, the clack of crab claws in a bucket, the way gulls cried like old ropes. "There's a cut-off through the headland," she said slowly. "A tidal cave. Dad called it the blowhole, but it's really a low tunnel. Old folks laid a wooden rail inside decades ago to drag salvage up the hill. At low tide, you can crawl through and come out past the old chain link behind the warehouses." Maya looked up. "Tide tables?" Rachel turned to the fridge where her mother had once pinned recipes and now taped the moon's moods. -6 inches at 2:12 a.m., We'd have 45 minutes on the floor before the ocean starts taking it back. Ben flexed his hands, knuckles cracking softly. 45's enough if the cameras stay blind. Maya pulled a thumb drive necklace from under her shirt. They will. I can loop video for 2 minutes and then stretch with noise. If anyone's watching live, they'll see rain and boredom. Rachel fought the reflex to cradle her belly with both arms. And if they're not just smuggling, if they're armed, we leave. If there's a trigger we can't control, Jack said. We observe, record, call it up the line. You don't play hero when the ocean's against you. Coda huffed as if in agreement, and Rachel's mouth twitched. You hear that? Even he thinks we plan, not charge. The cave's mouth yawned black under the lighthouse bluff, the beam sweeping past in slow, patient arcs. The air tasted of iron and wet stone. Rachel tightened her headlamp strap and tested each step with care. Balance had become negotiation since the baby, a gentle shifting of center, a reminder that every choice was no longer hers alone. Coda took the lead, pads silent on slick rock, head low, ears forward. When the path narrowed to a crawl space, he dropped and belly slid, then turned to look back as if to say, "Follow me. Trust the stone." Ben went first after Coda, backpack scraping old timber, shoulders brushing the cave's ribs. "Watch the middle," he called softly. "The rails rotted. Step on the outer beams." His voice didn't echo. The cave drank sound. Maya came next, breathing steady, the snug red light of her tablet pulsing as scripts ran. Camera, loops, spooling, wireless masts confused into believing nothing was happening. She checked her watch. "Timer set, 90 seconds to blind the north fence," she whispered. "Starting now." Jack eased Rachel through the narrowest section. She felt his forearm settle like a bar across her back to steady her. It was the first touch all night that made her think of safety instead of survival. As they emerged from the tunnel's far throat, Coda halted, nose testing air. He glanced left, then right, then cut left with confidence born of thousands of scents, learned and filed. Diesel, old rope, mouse droppings, cat, human. Rachel peered through chain link that warred with blackberry vines. On the far side, the warehouse skeleton, half ribs of steel catching moonlight, puddles strewn like coins around its feet. A temporary dock jutted into black water, and there, hulking, quiet, the shape of a vessel sleeping with its eyes open. "Sea wraith," Maya murmured. They brought her in with the lights off. A forklift beeped as softly as a machine could. Men in slickers moved like chess pieces in the rain. Their faces were featureless under hoods, just shapes, gestures, habits. A supervisor barked orders in a clipped tone, the sort of voice that liked being obeyed without the chore of being respected. Ben's hand brushed the fence, testing give. "There's a section repaired with cheap ties," he said. "2 snips and we're through." "Not yet," Jack cautioned. "We record first. We need plates, faces, crate stencils." Maya lifted a compact drone, matte black, no lights, and let it ghost upward between rebar teeth. Her screen bloomed with angles, serial numbers, vessel registry, the telltale hazmat diamond mis-stuck under a wind energy sticker. "Got it," she breathed. "Manifest image, and—" "Wait." Her finger froze, then drifted to enlarge a timestamp. "Guard rotation just changed. Not on schedule." Coda's rumble began low and rolled into his chest like thunder, deciding whether to become lightning. Rachel felt it before she understood it. A pressure shift, a prickle across the back of her neck. The wind turned. Somewhere, a radio crackled. A floodlight snapped on, washing the fence in hard white. Maya's tablet flashed. Loop, compromised. On the dock, a foreman jerked his head in their direction as if the darkness itself had coughed. 2 guards peeled off, rifles slung, boots slapping wood. Ben's wire cutters gleamed in his fist, then went still. Rachel's heartbeat drummed, too loud, too fast, and the baby answered with a slow, stubborn kick, as if to say, "Do not run." Jack's voice was barely breath. "Fence or cave?" Coda stared through the mesh, body lowering, muscles drawing tight like a bowstring. The hair along his spine rose in a ridge of black fire. He didn't look back to Rachel this time. He looked forward, because danger was already coming, and the tide had begun to rise. Rain hammered the half-finished warehouse like fists demanding entry. Every gust sent loose panels clanging, echoing like war drums. The sea behind them churned, relentless and hungry. Rachel Morgan's pulse thrashed in her throat as she pressed back against a stack of crates, one shaking hand instinctively cradling her swollen belly. Coda stood in front of her, hackles raised, brown eyes locked onto the growing danger. His chest expanded with a low, rumbling growl. Thunder trapped in fur. He was just 4 years old, but in that moment he held the posture of every guardian ancestor who had ever stood between innocence and evil. Jack Dalton moved beside Rachel, lips pressed into a grim line. His shirt was already soaked through, clinging to the carved muscles of a man who had pulled too many bodies from too many tempests. A thin line of blood cut across his temple. He hadn't noticed the injury and wouldn't have cared if he had. "I'm not losing anyone tonight," he muttered, though that promise was far heavier than he let show. A thud shook the loading bay as Sergei Moroz, broad-shouldered, shaved head glistening, lunged through the shadows. Rage transformed his cold, slate-gray eyes into shards of shrapnel. Sergei was a man forged in mercenary work. Jagged knuckles, a jagged past, and a jagged philosophy. Strike first, question never. He raised his pistol toward Rachel's abdomen. Coda shot forward like a black and tan lightning bolt. Bang! Sparks spat from a steel beam, inches from Rachel's spine. The baby twisted in her womb, terrified but alive. Sergei cursed in Russian, shaking out his half-numbed wrist from the impact of Coda's hit. "Worthless mutt," he spat. Ben Rossi charged from the right, a human battering ram of muscle and conviction. Years of salvage work had built him sturdy as a pier post. He slammed Sergei into a pallet, the crack of wood and bone smothered by thunder. Rachel gasped as a sharp cramp seized her abdomen. Her knees buckled. The baby was reacting to her terror, or maybe the world was reacting to theirs. Jack caught her under the arms. "Breathe. In and out. You hear me, Rachel? Slow." But slow was a luxury no one owned anymore. At the docks, panic erupted like sparks from a cut wire. Victor Hale, tall, silver-streaked hair plastered to his skull, scrambled onto a sleek black motorboat. His custom wool coat was already drenched, but his greed remained bone-dry. Years of unethical deals had carved selfish grooves into his handsome face, the kind of charm that fooled investors, but not those who had truly bled. He jammed the ignition. "Get us off the dock," he barked to the trembling deckhand beside him. A thin man with nervous stubble and no conviction of his own, wearing a neon vest too big for his shoulders. Jack roared across the warehouse, "Maya, stop that boat!" Maya Chen, soaked hair plastered to her cheek, flicked a switch on her waterproof console. She was slight, agile, and sharpened by intelligence, the sort of mind that solved problems before most people noticed them. She slammed a large button. A CO2 rescue float shot like a torpedo, exploding beneath the boat's bow. The motorboat reared, then crashed violently against a piling. Victor stumbled, fury twisting into fear. Back inside, the air smelled of salt, oil, and violence. Rachel tried to manage her breathing. The cramping wasn't random. Her body was edging towards something she wasn't ready for. "Jack, the baby," she whispered, terror wobbling in her tone. Jack pivoted with one hand gripping his sidearm. "Nobody touches you. Nobody touches him," he replied, eyes flicking to her belly. Coda returned to her side, blood along his spine, not his own yet, but a warning of what the next seconds could bring. Ben pinned one guard, zip-tying wrists with practiced precision. Maya's voice crackled through comms. "Radio blackout in effect. 60 seconds left." Sergei wasn't done. Like a predator resurrected by hate, he surged back up, a combat knife flickering like a silver fang in his fist. His snarl was the soundtrack of nightmares. He charged, straight for Rachel. There was no hesitation, no thought, only instinct, only love. Coda hurled himself into the path of the blade. His bark sliced the storm, and then the blade sliced him. Rachel's scream tore from her in a way that shook her entire soul. Time broke. Jack fired. Twice. Sergei collapsed. The monster finally still. The warehouse lights flickered, dissolving into emergency red. Rain drummed applause for the violence. Maya sprinted over, sliding to her knees beside Coda. "Pressure on the wound!" she shouted, her voice cracking with unwelcome fear. Rachel dropped next to him instantly, hands trembling above the darkening fur. "Coda, no. Baby, please. Stay." She couldn't form full sentences. Tears turned his coat into chaos. Coda's chest rose, uneven, desperate, but rose. He lifted his head just enough to nuzzle her palm, his eyes still fierce, still choosing to guard her, even while bleeding. Jack's breath hitched. "We need to move. Now." Because the storm wasn't over. Because Victor Hale still ran free. And because the ocean was rising, ready to swallow everything. Rachel clung to Coda's fur. "He saved us," she whispered. But the night was not done trying to take back what it had lost. The storm broke sometime after midnight. But inside the half-built warehouse, the real battle wasn't over. Coda lay trembling in Rachel's lap, blood darkening his fur. Each shallow breath felt like time slipping through her trembling fingers. Her vision blurred from tears, from exhaustion, from the fierce instinct screaming that she must protect her child and this loyal heart that protected her. Sirens wailed in the distance. Jack Dalton knelt beside them, shoulders rising and falling as adrenaline warred with control. His rough hands, scarred from years of rescuing strangers, moved with surprising gentleness over Coda's flank. "Stay with us, boy," he murmured. Jack's voice rarely cracked. It did now. Rachel brushed her fingertips over Coda's ear. "You saved us again," she whispered, "but I'm not letting you go. Not tonight." The warehouse doors slammed inward. Floodlights spilled white fire across the concrete. Sheriff Mason Klein entered first, drenched, face carved with something new. Resolve. For once, his wet mustache didn't hide cowardice, but shame and determination. Behind him moved federal agents in tactical jackets, tall, focused, their boots synchronized like thunder disciplined into footsteps. Klein raised a hand. "Everyone stand down. This place is under federal control now." Victor Hale, hair plastered, eyes wild, screamed bloody threats as two agents secured his wrists behind him. The deckhand beside him looked like a wilted weed, sagging into custody without protest. "You can't arrest me," Victor spat. "This town is not yours anymore," Klein said, harsher than anyone had heard him speak. "Not after what you've done." For a fleeting moment, Rachel saw the man Sheriff Klein might have been, the protector Harbor Rock once trusted before money turned law into weakness. One agent, Dr. Alan Whitford, emergency medic for the task force, rushed forward. He was in his early 50s, salt and pepper beard trimmed neatly, glasses fogged from the storm. His calm confidence radiated a lifetime spent saving lives in chaos. "Let's get both patients checked," he instructed. "Dog first." He prevented a homicide. Klein blinked. "You can do that?" Whitford shot him a flat look. "I have 2 degrees and a spine. Step aside." Jack barked a nervous laugh. For the first time in hours, Rachel allowed herself a tiny breath of disbelief. Maybe, just maybe, they had made it. Inside an ambulance, everything smelled of antiseptic and hope. Dr. Whitford cleaned and stapled the wound on Coda's side. Shallow, thank God. "He'll limp for a few weeks, but he's tougher than steel," the doctor said. Rachel squeezed the dog's paw. Coda's tail thumped once, weak but triumphant. Next came Rachel's turn. A soft-voiced EMT named Olivia Reyes examined her. She was 26, with warm amber eyes and curly black hair tucked under her bath cap. Her calm presence felt like sunlight through curtains. "Your contractions were stress-induced," Olivia explained. "Baby's heartbeat is strong and steady. You're safe now." Rachel exhaled, eyes closing in grateful relief. Jack stood outside the ambulance doors, soaked to the bone, adrenaline fading into vulnerability. When Rachel looked his way, he offered a tired, crooked smile, the kind only true survivors share. The agents loaded Victor Hale into a cruiser. Chase Hale stood nearby in cuffs of his own, shoulders hunched, arrogance extinguished. When he saw Rachel, he lowered his gaze, guilt burning through the last embers of entitlement. His voice cracked. I'm sorry." The apology changed nothing about the past, but it changed everything about what could come next. Days later, the storm stories spread with the morning coffee. Federal charges mounted. North Star horizons dissolved. Madeline Pierce confessed to being paid for lies, her designer armor falling apart under truth. Sheriff Klein stepped up, not away, cleaning house inside his own station. Redemption written not in words, but in actions. Harbor Rock breathed again. A golden morning arrived months later, the sea sparkling like glass, gulls spinning joyfully overhead. A brand-new painted sign glowed above the clinic, Lighthouse Haven, where strays find home. The entire town gathered for the reopening ceremony. Children cheered when they spotted Coda, now sporting a medal-shaped tag engraved with a tiny anchor and paw print. His gait was still a bit uneven, but his pride was unbreakable. Rachel wore a flowing maternity dress in soft blue, her cheeks fuller now, her heart lighter. Jack stood behind her, steady as the tide. When the speeches ended, Rachel stepped off the porch and pressed her forehead to Coda's. "Your family," she whispered, "always." That night, as stars hummed their silent blessing, Rachel lay in bed, Jack's arm curled around her like the safest harbor. She traced circles over her belly, feeling tiny kicks like Morse code messages. "I'm here. I'm coming. I'm loved," Jack murmured, half asleep. "Hope sometimes has 4 paws, you know." A quiet laugh escaped her, and very pointy ears. Coda, sprawled at their feet, lifted his head as though he understood every word, and then a cry, short, sharp, beautiful. Baby Caleb arrived under gentle sunrise and the steady hands of Dr. Whitford. Coda padded to the bedside, eyes shining, tail soft, swaying like a lullaby. He placed his chin near the newborn's tiny fist, a vow sealed without words. Rachel looked at her son, then at Jack, then at Coda, the guardians of her new world. Their silhouettes walked the beach that evening, a woman, a man, and a loyal German shepherd. Each step wrote another line of a story not about fear, but about courage rediscovered. The ocean whispered against their ankles. The lighthouse beam swept across them like a blessing. Harbor Rock finally had its heroes, and hope finally had a home. In every storm we face, there are angels God sends. Sometimes they walk on 2 legs, and sometimes on 4. Rachel, her little boy Caleb, and brave Coda remind us of something powerful. Miracles still happen. Not always with lightning from the sky, sometimes through loyalty, through love, and through the courage God places in the hearts of His creatures. When life pushes you to your knees, remember, that's a perfect position to pray. And when you feel alone, look to the ones who stay by your side. They may be the blessing heaven prepared long before your struggle began. Would you join us in a prayer? May God watch over every mother, every child, and every loyal friend who protects us when we cannot protect ourselves. Because somewhere tonight, under the same stars God hung in the sky, a miracle is already on its way to you.